guys, this is Jenna Burt, host of the Confessions of a Military Spouse podcast. Thanks for listening to the following broadcast on Public House Media.
What's up, everybody? This is Christian Heimel, host of Press Row here on Public House Media. Thanks for listening to the following broadcast on Public House Media. Once you're done with this episode, I hope you'll come check out my show, Press Row, where we talk about the biggest issues in sports with the analysts, experts, and reporters who cover them. No nonsense, hard-hitting interviews on the sports topics you're talking about. A new show comes out every single Thursday. And don't forget to subscribe on iTunes so you never miss an episode of Press Row. Thanks again for checking out the following broadcast on Public House Media.
Welcome to Beauties and Headcanons, where we're nerdy and you probably are too. This is Emily, and I'm here with Lindsay and Elisabeth. Finally, it's been a couple weeks. I'm so sorry. But I'm finally back with you guys. Might be the last time I'm back with you guys before my baby comes, because I'm very pregnant right now. Or maybe I've had the baby by now, because this episode will be coming out after my due date, so we'll see. Anyways, we're here to talk nerdy to you guys about an interesting topic that Lindsay dug up while she was looking around for some ideas. We're calling the episode, well, we're not quite sure. We'll call it something eventually. But right now, we're interested in the concept of male or female gendered people playing as the opposite gender in RPG video games. It's interesting because it's not an uncommon thing for people to do, and there's a lot of different reasons why people do it. Even my husband has talked with me about it, and I'm like, for me personally, I feel like I just always play as a female, just because that's what I like to do. But other people, there's a lot of different reasons why they will do one or the other. So we're going to talk to you guys about that today. But first, Lindsay's going to hit us off with some Geek on Fleek.
Okay, yes. So for Geek on Fleek this week, I got to thinking actually about all of the different subscription boxes feed based off of things that I've been talking about recently. So I did talk about that one store that was closing and how, you always have these friends who have all the cool, geekiest stuff. Well, the subscription boxes that have been real adamant lately in our inboxes and in our advertisements have been really interesting. So everyone's got like the FabFitFun, and people are really pressing that different YouTubers and bloggers and lifestyle people who are all about that. But we also know that there's a bunch of geek subscription boxes, ones that are specifically kind of aimed to fandoms or different likes and interests. And what's really cool about them is most of the time they aren't something that you can purchase individually because they're going to be something that is specifically for that company, for that particular box, or also for a much different price. So because you're buying the subscription and they intend for you to be getting the subscription next month and the month after that, or if it's quarterly or whatever the timing is for you, they continue to have your business, and that works the same way. Like sales or consumables. So it's cool because it's now the item that you get, but then you also will continue to get it, so they'll continue to get your money, so you continue to have all these really cool little things. So I just pulled up a few that I wanted to talk about real quick. And of course, we're not sponsored in any way, shape, or form. I just kind of, wish I had a bunch of disposable money so I could buy a bunch of these subscription boxes. Even ones for, younger kids too, or even based on what you're interested in. There's like even 10 to 12 specifically just gaming boxes. So everyone knows about Loot Crate, and that of course is like the one that is probably rated the best, I guess, for like it's one where you get wearables, shirts and comics, collectibles, and it's a really cheap price. That one's like $13.95 a month. There's one for Minecraft. It's called Mine Chest. And the cool thing is, like, there's supposed to be a price that you could manage, that you would be happy you spent that kind of money because you would have spent it elsewhere, even more so at the mall or whatever. I don't know if you guys were like me or not, but you ended up in the mall every other week or every weekend.
Oh, yes.
And it's just like not something that my daughter does either. Like I feel like at her age, I was at the mall every weekend, spending all the money I had, like it was burning holes in my pockets. And she doesn't do that, but I feel like this is kind of a cool way to stay that as well. So there was also, and so the Minecraft one's like $30 a month. That's cool for kids. You know, there's a super geek box. That one looks like all kinds of different fandoms and other stuff. I don't know. Their big pictures have Nintendo and Star Wars and Captain America on it. So really, you know, they're trying to encompass all things, all fandoms, from Mario to Marvel to Zelda. And that one again, you know, like the $13, Loot Crate's also got Loot Gaming, which is specifically aimed towards gaming. That one's like $26 of Loot Crate. So, okay. There's a Loot Anime, obviously. Loot Wear, T-Blocks. T-Blocks is like a new graphic T-shirt every month. Like, because you know when you go to T-Fury or T-Turtle or whatever, and you're looking for the T-shirt you want, and you end up with like 12 of them in your cart trying to figure out which one you wanted.
You're on T-Public looking for our T-shirts, and you find other ones that are cool too.
Exactly. You guys know those Funko Pop figurines? They have a subscription box.
Ooh. Oh goodness, so that's awesome.
$10 Funko Pop each month. That one's pretty cool. But again, you can like skip a month too. I mean, then there's Geek Fuel. That one's from that magazine of the same name.
Okay.
Yeah, and so that one has like all the different comic book stuff as well as the different games, and it looks like they might even like have old school looking decals and stuff in there too. And so far, you know, what I've seen, nothing's actually popping out at me as being like too expensive. So it's kind of there's a Nickelodeon box. Do you guys remember Nick? I know maybe Emily, you weren't allowed to watch it. But
which one?
Nickelodeon.
Oh, I can watch Nickelodeon. I just couldn't watch Rugrats.
Yeah, that was me that didn't have TV.
Sorry. Yeah.
That's okay.
Yeah. I can appreciate that. I have a hard time believing that they would be able to dredge up so much stuff from our past. You know, like, who's creating this stuff right now that's still being able to, keep it sustainable?
Well, you know, I had seen a YouTuber, Graveyard Girl, unbox one of those Nickelodeon boxes, and there was a ton of nostalgic stuff in there. Like, I mean, I was looking at all the stuff she was pulling out, and I'm like, wow, that's like, it's a lot of stuff, and it's a lot of like relevant things to the theme of the box. And I can't remember what price she paid for it. She wasn't sponsored by it. She just like unboxed it.
Yeah.
Nice.
I feel like that would be a really cool thing for us to do, honestly.
That could be really cool, actually.
Yeah. Well, then there's a Disney box. That one's obviously the most expensive that I'm seeing.
Oh yeah.
Like $70 a month.
Disney's always going to be expensive.
Yeah.
That's the theme. It's expensive, but it's worth it. So,
yes.
Right.
There's a brick loot one that's like, it doesn't look like it's a Lego one, but it's obviously of the same idea where it's building different brick structures. And then they've also got those retro pop boxes. So that one was also on my list. And we kind of, I'm going to end with that one just for sake of time. But the retro pop box has like an 80s retro box, a 70s retro box, a 60s retro box. So, you have to see like Gumby and Pez dispensers from when we were from those 80s.
Yes.
Yeah, it would be really cool to kind of delve into being able to get something like this once a month and see what's in there. They've got the Pusheen box too, so you know that.
Oh yes.
The cat.
That is my favorite thing ever.
I have it as my picture at work because we keep changing it to cats. But I would love someone to suggest a geek subscription box for me to try, and I'd love to unbox it. So you guys let me know. And that's it for Geek on Flick. So now we get to jump into the episode.
All right. So we have a couple of articles that we were referencing that Lindsay got for us regarding mostly men playing as female characters in RPG games. But it obviously would go either direction, too. Because although it is less common, I saw in one of the articles it said 23% of men opt to play as women, but only 7% of women opt to play as men. So it does go both ways, but maybe not as frequently. Or it could just be because less females play games. I don't think so, though, because I feel like there's a lot of girls who play games. They're just not as vocal about it.
Yeah. Well, and I know in a lot of games that, the female options for, armor and, cosmetics and stuff like that can sometimes be, more skimpy, and, not all women who play those games want that aesthetic, and so they'll go for the man just so that they don't have to, deal with that aesthetic on
to run
their
around
characters.
in a ridiculous-looking outfit that would obviously serve no purpose. Yeah, I get that.
Well, it's
that
funny,
makes
too,
sense.
because when you think about how these things play out in real life, I had read a little bit about it was called male privilege for nerds or something, and it talked about this girl who was in a comic book shop, and it was a girlfriend of a guy who was there, and she may or may not have been terribly comfortable being there, and there was some guy who had come up to her, and his hygiene might not have been so great, and stereotypical male with not the best social skills, okay? Yeah. So he had come up to her and had obviously made her really uncomfortable with what he had said. And it referred to, her being a girl, maybe not necessarily being there because she wanted to be or because she was interested. And that's sort of happened to me before. I'll admit, I've gone into a comic book shop and not been terribly comfortable standing next to the guy who was looking at the anime risque looking stuff that was in the section next to me. You know what I mean?
Right.
So, and not to say anything about everyone, generally speaking, but for this particular female, it was like a deterrent to wanting to being able to do that thing, to go into a store. She may or may not have been more comfortable with her boyfriend being there, but there's something to be said about going into a store that is primarily, stereotypically, a place where guys would go, comic book stores, that kind of thing. And that stereotype is changing now, so I don't want to deflect from that, but I do feel like it's still kind of a thing because I've been that girl. So, and my daughter's been that girl. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
She's not even able to be sexualized in any way at this point in time. But the idea behind having an avatar that would be significantly, different than your body type. So a guy who would pick a girl's body type, why would he do that? Or why would a girl pick a guy's body type for an avatar as opposed to their own, the gender director? Make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I mean, personally, from what I've, experienced, the reasons for choosing an opposite gender character kind of varies and is kind of individualized, because I'm in a couple of different gaming groups. Thankfully, I'm in some good gaming groups. I'm not in the kind where, people are looked down on because of their gender or because of the game or consoles that they play. And one of the groups in particular is devoted to Skyrim mods. And so there's a bunch of people that will share screenshots of characters that they make and landscapes and stuff that they are using mods on to kind of show off either mods that they've downloaded or maybe mods that they have created, because there's some really, really cool stuff in there that the members themselves have made, and they make them and kind of show them off there. And more often than not, if it's a character that they share, it's a female character. And I think there's a couple of reasons for this. One, obviously there's a lot more available when it comes to customization for female characters. Even mod-wise. And the topic had actually come up in that group before. I think like maybe a few days before you brought up the topic with us in chat.
Really?
Yeah. This is a weird coincidence. Funny. And there's, of course, like a varied answers. And one of them was that there were more options in customization. Another reason was because they tended to play out their characters like an RPG story. And so, obviously in the story in their head, the character was female and they're just guiding that character through, whatever story they're doing. And, it doesn't really occur to them that it has to be male, the character is just female. And, and then of course others were like, well, if I'm playing a game, I want a really good looking character and I want to look at something that I think is nice, Mm-hmm. So in my case, if I am a straight guy, I want to look at a pretty girl. So that was their reason.
Right. And oftentimes you're still kind of looking at the back of that character,
True.
Right? So.
Yep.
Well, I mean, with the mods you can download, that can be a really nice back.
Right.
Yep.
Just saying.
That's the truth. It can be. And I was talking with my husband about this too, because he has played RPG games as both genders often, and he'll usually, I think, start with male, but he'll do a female run through at least once of pretty much any game he plays if there's a gender option. And it's part of it for him is like seeing if the storyline itself plays out any differently if he plays as a male or a female. And especially with the game Mass Effect, he just did a playthrough of Mass Effect 1 this past, couple months or so, and he was talking with some of he streamed it all on his Twitch channel, and he was talking with some of his viewers as he was getting to different points in the storyline, and he's like, yeah, if you play as a female in this part, these are the options, or these are you can have these options as love interests or that sort of thing. And so different storyline things are also kind of woven into which gender you play too.
I've definitely found that true for a couple of the games that I play, notably like especially with like the romance options for Dragon Age, because unlike in Fallout 4, they are not it's not all like bisexual options. Because in Fallout 4, like it doesn't matter what gender the player character is, they can be with any romantic option. But in Dragon Age, there are limits. Sometimes on gender, sometimes on gender and race. And so...
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, so like, for instance, Cullen will only romance a female human or a female elf. And Solus will only romance a female elf. And Sarah will only romance a female, doesn't matter what race, but she'll only romance a female character. So... taking that into account, like when you create your character, that can actually limit some of your options, which will also, change up some of your cutscenes and some of your options later down in the story for like who you might want to romance and bring in to that.
So basically the dialogue and the interactions with the non-player characters changes?
Yep.
Based off of what your character is?
Yep, because like if you're a certain gender, you won't get the option to flirt with some people.
What good does flirting do in a game?
Flirting in Dragon Age basically like opens up the possibility for romance. It basically
to have like a relationship.
Yeah. So like in other words, it will tell the AI that, hey, I'm maybe interested in a relationship with this character. And so like later on down the line, like the more things you do in quests, your companions will either approve or disapprove. And then the higher your approval gets, then also the more you flirt with them, then the more you can actually like pursue an actual relationship with them.
Okay.
At least your player character can in game.
Yeah.
Sure.
It's a lot of fun.
There have been some Black Mirror episodes lately that talk about like tech and gaming and social situations like that change your ratings and choose your own adventure, that kind of stuff. So it sounds like writing that kind of gaming language would be immensely difficult to do.
It'd be very specific.
Brain might have just exploded a little bit.
Yep. I have a friend of mine who is a computer programmer, and he plays a lot of video games himself too. And he's like, "Man, I can only imagine what these gaming programmers go through."
Obviously, I play games. I play lots of different games, and I prefer RPG games because they're just a lot of fun and they're very immersive, and I love the lore and everything. And I found it really interesting looking up and reading those articles for this episode because I looked up the study, and the study itself didn't specify. I mean, obviously they specified male and female gamers, but they didn't specify if they were cisgender or not, if they were trans or possibly genderqueer. And it was just male and female. So I kind of assumed that maybe they're just referring to cisgender, but I don't know because they didn't specify. And I know for myself, who is a genderqueer person, like I tend to switch a lot, where I'll play a female character, and then I'll play a male character, and then a female character, and then a male character. And it's, especially in something like Dragon Age, where you can like change the species as well as the gender. Like I literally have a whole list of characters for each species and each gender and even each class, like rogue, mage, and warrior, just because I want to experiment with each playstyle and each race and each gender, because you get different options in conversations regarding your class, regarding your gender, and regarding your species. So that's me. I just like to explore all of those possibilities. And obviously, speaking of gaming, one of the really cool things about Dragon Age that I really love is the diversity that they offer. I had done a post a few weeks ago about Dorian Pavis, who is an openly gay mage from Teventer, and he's probably my favorite character in there. But another one of my favorite characters, who is also from Teventer, is actually a trans man. His name is Cremisius at Classy, but he's usually just known as Crem. And as I covered in my post, Teventer is ruled by mages, so like obviously if you're born a mage, you have a lot of privilege. But Krem is not a mage. He was not born as a mage. And he wanted to be in the military, but that was kind of restricted to him because he was obviously born female. So he started passing as male to kind of get into the military, and he got caught. And so he started running away, and he almost got away. He was in a tavern when he was jumped by some Teventers who were trying to bring him back, when one of the companion characters for the player character, the Iron Bull, he steps in and he saves Krem. He actually loses an eye doing so, but he saves Krem, and he takes Krem under his wing and brings him in as a part of his mercenary company, the Bull's Chargers. And when at one point in the game, right before you recruit the Iron Bull, you actually end up meeting Krem first. And he'll meet you and he'll tell you that the Iron Bull wants to meet you and he'd like to sign up and everything. And so he's the one that actually facilitates your working relationship with the Iron Bull. And I remember, like, the first time that I saw him, I'm like, oh, this is a really cool character. Like, I kind of want to look up and learn more about him because, that's the kind of person that I am. I'm always looking stuff up on wikis and trying to learn more. And so I looked him up, and in there, I saw that he was a trans man. And I'm like, really? Like, it didn't even occur to me that they might include a trans character in there, but they did. And it feels really good. Like, even like later in a bar scene, when you get to sit down and drink with the Bull's Chargers, you can actually bring that up as a topic, and like he'll just flat out tell you that I am a man. And it's just really cool to see that kind of representation in games.
Yeah, that's interesting that they like went in depth that much into characters like that, just to make sure that it was all wrapped up into the storyline so that it all like followed,
Right. But it's still realistic too. Like
right.
I think that's why I was talking about like my brain exploding, because I remember, playing online RPGs like World of Warcraft and Rift and EverQuest. And of course, you made your avatar and you played around, and there was a little, it seems like a lot of the details that are in gaming now were only just on the precipice back then. So not to like date myself, but 12, 15 years ago, the best you could do is, I really liked dark elf characters, and they were generally speaking not necessarily allowed in certain cities, and certain NPCs would literally just look at you and come to fight you. So you had to make sure that you stayed away, and then if there wasn't much going on in the scroll or the tile section that would tell you what was going on, so and so would look at you amiably or would glare at you. And that was really how you knew that kind of race and even sometimes profession. I liked to make rogues, and I liked to make, when I got into more like half-elves and stuff, I would make druids and whatever. But I think it's interesting that it was like just at the precipice with those. And especially thinking about going from where on an online RPG, when you were working with other people that were across the country, and how they would interact with you based off of the character that you had chosen to play, versus how they would react to you if it was, in real life and real gameplay. So we can even sort of pull from things like, again, I don't want to reference Black Mirror, but they did have a episode that came out recently where two male characters, one of them was playing the female, and there was, some hot and heavy nonsense that happened. But simultaneously, like, that kind of AI and virtual reality is like really, it's immersive. It's almost kind of scary to me that those kinds of things could possibly be possible in the future as far as technology, but also that we were really just touching just on the cliff before, like so-and-so would whistle at your character walking past, or, online relationships happened a lot. I know people who had online relationships and found out that, that person wasn't actually, that person. In Ready Player One, the main character is best friends with someone who portrays himself as a man in the avatar and is not when he meets him in real life, and meets her in real life. And it's it's a subject of discussion, but I feel like there's a shift where now we're starting to understand why people would do that, and what the motivations or the non-motivations behind something like that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, and one of the articles that I was reading actually mentioned that when the male players would play as female characters, that some of their mannerisms, like in chat and stuff like that, that it would actually become a little bit like more like a female interacting instead of
more feminine.
Yeah,
sure.
Yeah, so that was interesting to, like, when they're role playing, even if not everything changes, like, there are still some aspects that they kind of, sits them in that mindset.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Or even just interacting differently, or not to say to take advantage, but to get favors done a little bit more easily. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like,
yeah.
I was always a cleric. I will be a cleric until the day I die, but it was almost sometimes easier to be a female in some of the games that I played. So,
yeah. Well, and I know, from speaking with my husband and some of his other Twitch friends and other gamer friends and things, like, I know that a lot of first-person shooter games, they'll just choose a female avatar because it's a smaller target, smaller hitbox. So
that's smart playing.
right? That's just being smart, because
Yeah.
it's a lot harder to hit a smaller frame when they're running around darting, and they might even have better mobility just because of the way that they're designed too. So I mean, I know a few people that'll play like Fortnite or Battlefield as a female just because it's harder to hit them.
Yeah, I know. There was in Mortal Kombat 11. There was one particular tower in the Towers of Time where I was watching Maximilian Dude, who's a YouTuber, play this one, and I couldn't beat it, but he finally beat it. And the catch was that you had to win the round flawlessly. In other words, you had to take no damage from any sources. But there was poison on the ground, and the poison would eat at your health. And so he had to get a character that was tall enough to where he wouldn't automatically like be sucking in the gas from the ground. So he would be tall enough to like, be over it. And like pretty much the only character that would do that is Raiden, who is like, supposed to be a 7-foot tall god. So, it's interesting that, some circumstances, do force you to kind of just, you have to choose a certain character because that will give you the advantage.
I think it's so cool that those things are really built into the characters and things now. We started out with something like D&D or, playing with dice and having a dungeon master and someone who would talk about, and make up these stories about your character, and based off of whatever game you were playing, they have a certain amount of chance to defeat or not defeat the foe, or to be able to run away or not. And these things are so much more advanced in gaming. I would never even think about adding those kinds of things to the aesthetics of a character.
Right, yeah. I mean, especially if it's a completely imagined in your own brain character that you made up yourself. It's so different than having an avatar presented in front of you that somebody else designed and that might have a completely different backstory than you would have given them too.
Right. It's like beautiful and strange.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's really big right now. We don't necessarily see it, but we're really fully immersed in a world that has the ability to change, and that we're able to change ourselves and change our characters in AI and in virtual reality, as well as I'm so excited for where we're going, and I'm also petrified, but that's probably another episode.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like, especially when it comes to, like, RPG games where you create your own characters, like, the options are just getting, like, more and more customizable. I know I talked about that a little bit more in one of our episodes, the Keanu Reeves episode, actually, when I was talking about Cyberpunk 2077, I think, sure. And where the character customization is just, like, vast, because obviously you choose your looks, your tattoos, your your modifications, but apparently it looks like you can also choose like your gender expression. So like, if you...
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So it's really cool. It's like something that like, is really appealing to somebody like me who is like, yeah, this is relevant to me, but it's not really something that I would have thought would actually get put in a game, So
Exactly.
I can't wait till April 2020 when I can finally play it.
Yeah,
I love that all these games have these release dates that are like years in the future.
I know.
Isn't it crazy?
Yeah, because you have to really keep your eyes laser focused. Like,
yeah,
that's where your head is.
There's a game called Star Citizen that my husband has been super excited about since like 2010.
Okay.
It's still in alpha. It's released and playable as an alpha mode, but they're still adding stuff to it, and it's been completely a crowdfunded game, and he was so excited about it because it's literally like you pretend that it's an RPG for space, and it's like an accurate scale model of the solar system and all the galaxies we know about and everything, and like it hasn't released in full yet because they keep adding extra stuff. They keep like getting more funding. And he's like, I just want to play the real game. Please.
Well, what's cool
So-
too is that, can you imagine the research that's involved in that to make it
Yeah.
accurate?
Yeah.
I know. Well, he
Mhm.
plays another game that's kind of similar called Elite Dangerous, and all of their stuff is a scale model too. It's amazing, like the actual like speed that it would take to get to each place in that galaxy. It's accurate to how long it actually takes to get there,
Oh
and
wow.
doing different
Cool.
jumps and everything like that. So like he could just be sitting there doing one mission, but it takes like a half hour of real time to actually get to where he's trying to go,
Wow.
because that's how long it would actually take if he traveled at that speed. It's crazy.
Yeah. Well, as somebody who is sitting here with absolutely no release date for Elder Scrolls 6 or Dragon Age 4, you can let
right.
him know that I sympathize with him with waiting for that full release.
Yes.
Yes, hey.
Yes, I'm sure. Well, they promised a full release by like, I don't know, 2012 or something. Yeah, no. Sorry, friends.
It's
Yeah.
2019.
They missed that. So, yeah. But anywho, okay, so I have periodically scientific here. It's kind of it got nothing to do with what we talked about though, but
Oh well.
it's an interesting perspective into human nature and how humans work. So that's cool. So I guess kind of along the lines of like how humans work. There was a study done on the ultimate limit of human endurance. And so this article comes from the BBC, but the study was done by Duke University
In North Carolina?
in North Carolina. Yeah,
I know exactly where it
Duke's a good
is.
school. Duke's a good school. And being that I'm pregnant, Elisabeth happened to catch the part of this in this article that pregnant women are endurance specialists, because we spend a lot of time at nearly the limit of what the human body can cope with as far as endurance goes. So according to all of their research that they did research on the Tour de France athletes, other elite events like marathon runners, and this race called the Race Across the USA, which is a 3,000-mile plus run from California to Washington, D.C. over the course of 140 days.
Ooh, no.
And yeah, so they did research on all of these. They basically, the competitors in this race did 6 marathons a week for months. So like straight. That's
Oh
a
my
long
God.
time. That's a lot of running. I would not sign up for that, man.
No.
But apparently I've been experiencing a similar amount of endurance for an extended period of time, because they figured out that the maximum amount of endurance that a human body can handle is 2.5 times the resting metabolic rate. So if you're just in a normal, relaxed state, not doing anything in particular, just kind of hanging out, watching Netflix or whatever, that's your resting metabolic rate. And your calories in your body just kind of burns through a certain amount by just resting and existing, because that's how much calories your body needs to stay alive. Okay, so that amount of calories is everybody has a slightly different resting metabolic rate, but that's the amount of calories. Now, in a sustained amount of time, the maximum amount for a person's metabolism to endure is 2.5 times that resting metabolic rate. So say the average person, their body uses like, I don't know, 2,000 or 1,500 calories in a day if they're resting. Okay, so like approximately. So 2.5 times that would be like 4,000 calories being used at that time, which makes a lot of sense why pregnant women are recommended to consume more calories while they're pregnant, because they're, first of all, they're growing a person, but their body's working overtime, like hardcore. So the study also found a pattern between the length of a sporting event and the amount of energy expenditure. So the longer the event, the harder it is for your body to burn through the calories. which sounds kind of weird. You'd think that the longer somebody is doing strenuous activity, it'd be easier for those calories to get burned up because they need it. But it actually kind of, thinking about it, it actually does make a little bit of sense, because if your body's using a whole bunch of calories, it doesn't want to run out of calories, because then it won't have anything to use for later. So it's trying to conserve energy to use later so that you can stay alive.
Oh, so it needs a resting state.
Yeah, it's trying to maintain at least some kind of baseline so that you don't burn too many calories and die, basically. And so people can go really far beyond their base metabolic rate while doing a short amount of exercise, but it's not sustainable in the long term because eventually you'd run out.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, in just one marathon, it's possible to do like 15.6 times their resting metabolic rate, but that's just in one, and that's, over the course of a few hours, right? Or the bicyclists in the Tour de France, which is like 23 days, used 4.9 times. So that's significantly less than the few hours of a marathon. For 23 days, they were using about 5-ish times the resting metabolic rate. So you can tell the longer that the events get, the lower their endurance gets. And then at a 95-day Antarctic adventure, one of these Antarctic adventurers were using 3.5 times the resting metabolic rate. So you can do, according to Dr. Herman Poncer from Duke, he said you can do really intense stuff for a couple days, but if you want to last longer, then you have to dial it back. So, and also there's also really kind of applies to people who have trained well for it too, because the better conditioned your body is for it, your body will understand what to do with your calories better. So it'll actually, your body will maintain a higher rate of caloric consumption for a longer time if your body is already used to doing that. And then during pregnancy, this is the cool part, because I am almost full term pregnant now. By the time this episode comes out, I will have passed my due date. So during pregnancy, women's energy use peaks at about 2.2 times their resting metabolic rate, according to the study. And 2.5 is what they say is the maximum the average person can endure for an extended period of time. So I'm not sure how long pregnant women are at that 2.2 times the resting rate, but I could say it's probably for a lot of the time, especially towards the end, where the baby's almost pretty well full grown, and like, I have to actually carry around somewhere around 20 to 40 extra pounds than what I was used to before pregnancy, although given it was added gradually. But, there's a lot less room for me to breathe or have my stomach's smushed. There's not as much room for my stomach, so I can't eat as large of meals as I was accustomed to before. So I have to eat smaller meals throughout the day to maintain my energy levels as well. But yeah, it's interesting. And it makes me feel like really awesome.
Yeah.
So that is a really cool article, and thank you, Elisabeth, for sharing that with me, so I can kind of dissect it and explain what goes on. It's really cool. I love it.
Oh yeah. So thank you guys for tuning in today for our episode. I hope you enjoyed it. If you guys play any RPGs out there, what is your preference for your player character? Do you typically choose one or the other, or do you tend to switch? Let us know on our social media, and if you enjoyed this episode, please share it with your friends. We'd love to get some more listeners out there as well. I'm Elisabeth.
And I'm Emily.
And I'm Lindsay. And thanks for getting nerdy with us today on Beauties and Headcanons.